Away from road construction to an issue that affects almost all of us, mobile money fraud is one of the common financial frauds people report of, maybe because the perpetrators are confident enough to approach you to get you to commit yourself. However, there is more to financial sector fraud than mobile. The banking industry reported approximately 115 million cedis as fraud to the Bank of Ghana in 2019. Rural and community banks lead the banking industry fraud report 2019 by the regulator. Now, they recorded 55% of the cases. I'll be sharing more details of that report as we go along. But one of the disturbing revelations is that 94% of total reported cases were committed by staff. Banking consultant Acheampong joins me on the show. Good morning, sir. Thank you for joining us. Now, over the past 3 years, the banking sector has had major challenges, with critics arguing that it could have a negative impact, especially on customer confidence. Do you see this revelation doing the same?
Yes, anything that dents the confidence is something that is taken seriously by both the regulator and industry watchers. And so this report, although if you put within perspective, it's relatively small, because if there are 150 million bank accounts and then we encounter 2,295 cases, then you will say that it's not a big sample. However, when it comes to something which has gone wrong, then even one is one too many. So for that matter, this 2,295 is a big chunk. And any one of them goes to affect the confidence that the customers have in leaving their monies in the care of the banks. So I think it's something that we need to look at very seriously.
Now, we are being told that this is largely being perpetrated by staff of the banks. Should there be a streamlining of persons employed into financial institutions?
Well, that I know is already in place. But as you rightly pointed out, the biggest of the infraction is in what we call savings or deposit suppression, where people like mobile bankers that go around collecting money from people to be put in their accounts, they suppress. And that one, as you can see, over the year has really increased by 43%, from a figure of 1,239 to 1,774. So it's an old age problem that needs to be arrested. But that incident also happens mainly in the non-universal banking sector, i.e. the rural banks, because they are the ones who have these mobile bankers going around. And the advice that we've been giving them is go a bit technical or techy, in the sense that if they can be using POS to collect monies from the customers and then immediately key in the details, it will register on the customer's phone and as well as head office of the bank. And so they will know that if you collected 1,000, then at the end of the day, when you return to the office, you account for 1,000. My inquiries suggested that some of the customers are not in favor of that because they don't want their partners to know what is in their bank account, which I thought was a little bit silly to say that because of that you don't want, your cash suppression problem to be arrested. But generally, this is where the problem is. And for the rural banks, the training they give must be re-emphasized, coaching the people that go out and so on. And there should be some incentive to shy them away from this infraction, which seems to be increasing rather than decreasing.
You just mentioned the rural and community banks, because they were really hit hard. 55% of the cases were recorded by them. Does this have anything to do with infrastructure even, and the capacity to detect and deal with fraud, especially cyber ones?
Yes. Well, that's what I said earlier, that one of the solutions is to go high tech, in that instead of using the normal passbook system to collect and then enter in the passbook, if they go, IT and then use a POS to collect, then that will immediately register both at head office and then send a message directly to the phone number of the customer. But the initial inquiries with one or two of the rural banks said that the customers are often not in favor of having their bank balances being put on their phones, because their partners will get to know how much they have, and they're trying to keep this away from them. I mean, it sounds stupid, but unfortunately, that is a reality that is there. So until then, what the rural banks have to do will be to continue to educate their staff to shy away from this infraction, because if you take the success rate in terms of cash suppression, you'll see that they succeeded in 80% of the cases. That in a total of 5 million, some 4 million was lost with cash suppression compared to other types of infractions that you have. So it is something that the rural banks have to take seriously and educate their customers that in the long term, it is in their interest to ensure that there's a way of checking the amounts collected from them on behalf of
Is it that they don't have the capacity to utilize some of these modern technology?
They do have the capacity, and some of them have already embarked on that. I know at least 3 or 4 rural banks that have been doing it. But admittedly, there are some who are also lagging behind, and they have to be brought up to speed to be able to, employ the technology. Yes.
I understand that some of these banks and financial institutions try to handle these matters internally. Should that be the way to go, especially since this is fraud and a crime as well?
Yes. Well, the first principle in banking is confidentiality, and that's why some do try to handle it internally. But the regulator doesn't take that at all. If any type of fraud is committed and is identified, you're supposed to file a report straight away to the regulator. If you don't, and then they find out, then the relative fine is so high that you will be discouraged from hiding it. So, yes, the banks will initially want to settle it internally. But I think it's getting to a point where some criminal charges are being pressed in some cases, although not in all cases.
Finally, Nana, there were also issues of check fraud, and that had included fraud as a result of cloned checks, stolen check leaflets, and check alteration. What advice will you give to the customers themselves? How do we handle some of these bank, checkbooks and ATM cards?
Yeah. Well, clone checks is something that has recently visited the banking sector, and the advice that we've been giving to customers is to ensure that the checkbook you have is a value item, and a value item is as good as physical cash. So if you have a checkbook, effectively you have an open account where all your money is in that checkbook. So if you don't take care of the checkbook and somebody is able to clone it, then it means they have taken cash, physical cash from you. So that's the advice that is often given, and that people should keep their checkbooks under safe and lock as they will keep their physical cash. That's one way of stopping the clone checks. The other is also on the bank side. They make sure that when they receive a suspicious transaction, they do call the customer to confirm that this is indeed they are the one that have signed that check. That some customers get upset when the banks call them to confirm a check that they have written, not realizing that it is in their interest for that to be done. So both the banks and the customers need education in that field, but we should see checks as value books.
Thank you very much. Nana Acheampong is a banking consultant, and we've been speaking about the recent Bank of Ghana report on 2019 fraud cases reported in the financial sector. We understand that 94% of these are perpetrated by staff.